sweet is that? Hey everybody, what's up? Thanks for checking the video out. Today's topic is giving the RS3 a bath. She's been through a couple rainstorms and a ton of bugs, apparently. So I thought I'd cover how I do a basic wash on the car. It's not gonna be anything too complicated, but I do try to keep the paint as clean as possible and use a specific method that keeps it in really good shape and minimizes scratching and marring and keeping it looking as good as possible. So I'm gonna go over that step by step today. I'm gonna strap the camera on my head and have you guys follow along, give you guys some tips and tricks. The way I wash my car, it seems kind of trivial, but I've definitely modified it over the years. I've been detailing cars for over a decade now, and I keep getting better and better, learning about new techniques, better products, better hardware to use, and things to make it easier and more effective. So follow along. Hope you guys like the video, and if you guys have any questions or anything about what I'm doing, drop in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. So the first thing I normally do while I'm getting everything set up, getting the pressure washer set up, all the buckets, everything, is start with the wheels. They're the dirtiest part of the car. They're what you're gonna wanna take care of first. All that grime, brake dust, it's really abrasive and you don't want it really anywhere near the paint or the rest of the process. So the first thing I do is spray it down with some wheel cleaner. I've been using this Meguiar's, it's pretty good. So the wheels are ceramic coated. They have a really good resistance to the brake dust and the dirt sticking to the actual wheel. So if I really wanted to, I could just take the power washer and spray all of it off and get, I'd say, 95% of the material off. But I still hit it with some brushes and do a physical scrubbing of the wheel. But I always start with some wheel cleaner. Spray it on, let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And while you're getting everything else ready, the buckets, the power washer, everything out, it'll start to eat away at the dirt and it'll make that step of the process a lot easier. So I'm gonna do that right now. All right guys, so while this sits on here, you can see it starts to activate when it turns purple, and that means it's starting to break down the iron and everything else in the brake dust and starting to loosen up that dirt. So I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit while I set everything else up, and then we'll be able to do the wheels first. One thing I'm really glad I invested in was a set of quick disconnect attachments for the power washer. It wasn't like this originally, it was just some threaded screw-on ends that came on the hose, but I bought some quick disconnects and it makes it really easy to hook this whole thing up, saves me a bit of time. And I ended up doing it on the garden hose as well. So I can just take this right out. What I highly recommend, guys, for even doing routine washes is a 2-bucket system. So one of them is purely for washing, which means the soap is in there, the sponge is in here right before it goes onto the paint. And the way this helps eliminate abrasives and anything from the sponge that could mar or damage the paint is you use the rinse bucket first. So as soon as you're done wiping down a panel of the car, you come right to the rinse bucket, drop it in, and try to get as much dirt and everything out of it as possible. That'll fall down below the grit guard here, and then you can wring it out in this bucket and put it right in your wash bucket. Get some fresh soapy water, really clean, non-abrasive soapy water, and that's what goes right back onto your car. So that's why I have 2 buckets. That's why I have 2 different colored grit guards, and then a totally separate bucket for washing your wheels. I rinsed this out last time and you can still see how much dirt and everything stays in there. So absolutely goes without saying, keep your wheel washing bucket separate from anything that goes on your paint. That's probably the very first step people might miss as far as keeping their paint in really good condition. Do not wash your paint with the same bucket or water or sponge that you use to do your wheels or your exhaust tips or anything like that. It's the quickest way to see some imperfections in the paint. So I'm gonna fill these buckets up, get some soap in there, and then fill up the foam cannon. Foam cannon is an awesome way to get a nice even coating of foam on. I usually do a pre-rinse, let that kind of soak in onto the paint and pick up any grit or dirt, or start breaking down these, they're bug guts. Let's not fight it. They're bug guts. So to help start breaking this stuff down, and then when I go do my actual sponge wash, a lot of that has already been loosened from the paint and will be more likely to come off and float on top of the paint in the suds instead of me essentially grinding it back in with the sponge. So get yourself a foam cannon. This attaches right to the end of the power washer nozzle, and it was like 30 bucks on Amazon. Has a really big capacity. They said this one was for trucks or SUVs, but since I do multiple coats per wash, it's nice to have the volume on this one and not have to go back inside and refill it with warm water a couple of times. And then as far as my wash bucket goes, I have a nice soft sponge that rinses off. That would have sucked. Wow, that rinses off really well. I have a really nice soft detailing brush with a black handle, which is separate from the red handle one that goes in my wheel bucket for the calipers and everything like that. Purpose of this is after I do my first foam, it's really good for getting in spots like this that you can't get in with the brush. Down here in this honeycomb grill, and then especially on the back in the recesses of the emblems, and in this honeycomb insert right here. So a couple bucks on Amazon. Again, really handy tools. And then this is for anything like if I want to do this in one big, if I'm in a hurry or something. I don't use this really as much as I do the smaller, softer brush. These bristles are a little more coarse and stiff. So I'll get these buckets filled up and then we'll move on. All right, so pretty much ready to go. Put a little bit of soap in my wash bucket. Sorry about this thing making that noise every 6 seconds. I think there's a small leak in here somewhere I gotta fix, and it's just the power washer keeping some pressure in it, but just ignore that every 6 seconds. So I got a little bit of soap in this bucket and in this bucket for the wheels. So all I do is take the power washer and just give it one of these, and it'll foam right up. This has been sitting for about 10 minutes or so. So I'm gonna give this a quick rinse off. I'm gonna rinse off every single wheel. And then before I actually go at the wheels with the brush and the soap, I'm gonna foam down the entire car, and that's gonna start my pre-soak, and that's gonna start loosening everything up, breaking these bug guts down, and lifting this pollen and dirt and everything that's off here. So get these rinsed off, and then we'll do a pre-foam. So after getting all this, all the wheel cleaner off, I give the fender a really quick spray down just to make sure that any of the stuff that came off, if it's on the paint, just give it a good rinse. And before I even do the foam, the pre-foam or the pre-rinse, I'm going to actually use the power washer and just spray the whole car down just to loosen a bit of the dirt, even before the foam goes on. So just from the wheel cleaner and spraying it off with a power washer, you can see 95% of the dirt and grime are already off the wheels. So doing the hand wash, the hand scrub of the wheels is just that extra. It's gonna get everything possible off the calipers and the wheel itself, and get those looking as good as possible. And then I did, like I said, spray everything in the area just to get any wheel cleaner off of the ceramic coating. Now the great thing about this ceramic coating is a car without it that had this kind of stuff on there, you might need bug, tar remover, anything like that, but the ability of this ceramic coating to keep stuff from sticking or clinging is phenomenal. So during my rinse, my pre-spray with just the water, it's gonna get a lot of this stuff off. Then when I let the foam soak in, it's gonna break it down even more. And then by the time I go to wash it with a sponge, I should get most of this off. I don't really need the bug tar remover, all that abrasive stuff. Because when you get into that kind of stuff, I'm gonna turn this off. Shut up. So when you get into that kind of stuff, that's really where you're starting to use these abrasive movements, pressure, putting unwanted pressure basically into the paint. And when you start getting these scrubbing motions, a more aggressive removal process on the paint, that's when you start to see scratches, holograms, spider webbing, all that stuff. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So the ceramic coating not only protects the paint from water spots, everything like that, but it makes it easier to clean the car. So it was definitely a worthwhile investment. I did it last year. I did a 2-stage polish, clay bar, detox, iron remover, everything, and then put the ceramic coating on, and it's been worth every penny. You can see how well the water beads up. When I go to dry this car, I actually do it with the hose. It's so hydrophobic that I run the hose over the paint, and the water sheets off, and that's how I dry most of the surface of the car. And then I finish up with the air cannon right there. And I really don't have to touch the paint beyond putting the sponge down to it when there's a lot of foam on it, and it keeps it nice and lubed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray the car down with just the water, see what I can get off. There's a ton of pollen on here and road grime from driving in the rain. But that'll help get most of that off before I put my first layer of foam on there. So general rule of thumb when washing cars, every single step, whether it's rinsing, washing, waxing, putting your final spray on, start from the top down. 2 reasons. 1, when you're washing it, make sure all the dirt runs towards the floor. If you wash down here first and then you end up coming back up here, any dirt that's here might just undo what you've done towards the bottom of the car. And 2, it kind of gives you a system of knowing where you've been and where you need to go. You can usually use body lines or body parts to break down the car into segments, and then you know where you are, you know what you still need to wash, and you're less likely to miss spots on the car. So I'll go over it when I start doing with the sponge, but I break it down into sections. I do, I draw a line from here up all around the car, and that's the first section I wash. Then I move to the hood, then the fenders, then the bumper, then I move down the side, and then finally to the rear. And I follow that process no matter what I'm doing, washing, waxing, clay barring, everything, and it just kind of keeps me in line. It gives me kind of a system to work off of. So you guys might notice that pattern while I'm working, and it's a good one to use. It's one I've learned over the years to just keep me from missing spots and then making my cleaning more effective. So take it or leave it. Oh, it's not even on. All right, so what I'm gonna do now, guys, is put that first layer of foam on there, and I'm gonna let it sit for a little bit while I go around and do all the wheels. By the time I'm done with the wheels, I'll spray them off. I will rinse off that first layer of foam, and that's gonna lift a good amount of this grime and dirt so that when I go lay that second layer of foam on and I start using the sponge, there's most likely gonna be very little on the paint left that could get caught up and end up scratching. So let's do it. So here are some of the basic tools I have in my wheel bucket. These wheel woolies are pretty awesome for getting the barrel of the rim and inside the brake discs. I have a couple different sizes. Just a smaller one in here somewhere. You just have to believe me. There it is. So I got 3 different sizes of those. I have this detailing brush that gets inside the calipers and within these lug nuts I have on here. Because of the size of the brake calipers on this car, I have a wheel brush like this one because I cannot fit the wheel woolies between the brake caliper and the wheel. So this is really good for getting in there and scrubbing around, and it gets to the spots that this guy can't. But this one goes pretty much everywhere. I just do small circular motions between each of the spokes. And I usually start top middle, work my way down one side, stop, top middle, work my way down the other side. So the dirt is always being pushed down to the bottom and I'm not picking it back up and putting it back up at the top of the wheel. So one of the amazing things about this Swiss Tracks flooring, I can wash my car in the garage. So it is just starting to pour outside. Any other day that would keep me from washing my car, but it drains right through the floor, runs out through the back. I absolutely love this flooring. I'm gonna do a video on everything I've done to the garage and I'm planning on highlighting this floor, but it makes life a lot easier and it's really nice to work on. And you can do whatever design or color or pattern you want. Shut up. I have a regular kind of microfiber sponge or cloth to get up back behind the spokes. So I just reach in there and do that. I grab the red detailing brush for doing the calipers. And then the lug nuts. And finally I just have a regular brush like this. Lets me get the tires in between the spokes. And if there's something you can't get with the brush, good old fingers. And then repeat that for every wheel. And then once we're done, we can go around and start rinsing the car down to begin on the body. Bam! Shit. Bam. So now that the wheels are done, the rinse is done, I use the detailing brush to get into all the intricate spaces and make sure those are done. I'm ready to attack the paint. So typically what I do is I foam in a section, work it down with the sponge, rinse it, move to the next section. So going section by section allows me to keep organized and know where I've been. And It also allows me to keep the soap from drying on the paint. One of the advantages I have with the floor and being able to work in the garage is I do not have to work in direct sunlight, so I don't have to worry too much about water spots or the soap drying sooner. And that's really nice because it allows me to not rush, work at a good pace, but also not have to work backwards and get the dried soap off the paint again. But I still do it section by section. So like I said, I typically divide it by the sections of the car. I usually use this line and up. Anything, windshield, everything, this line and up. Trunk lid and the rear window up. I lied. I'll even use this line right here. So everything from this line up, foam, wash down, rinse. Then I typically move to the hood. I'll do the hood, front bumper, and the front fenders, finishing right around here. The last thing I want it to touch is down here before it goes to the rinse bucket to get everything this wheel might have thrown up. Then I'll do one side. I'll start at the top of the door down, top of the door down, rear quarter panel, same thing. Work my way down. That's the last section it'll touch because this throws a lot of grime up on here. And then finally, I finish with the lid and the rear bumper and the rear diffuser. And then I'm ready to rinse it off. So I'll probably do very little talking during this time while I'm going through this whole thing, and I'll catch up with you guys when it's time to rinse it off and dry it. One thing I do want to note, you guys will notice, when I take the sponge and I put it on the paint, I'm not applying a lot of pressure. I'm almost just gliding the sponge across the surface, and I'm not really applying too much pressure. That's a good way to introduce some scratches or abrasives to your paint. And then you'll notice me also working in straight lines instead of circles and swirls. If you end up scratching your paint or doing damage to your paint, if you have one straight line, it's usually a little easier to polish and clean that up versus if you have a huge swirl and you gotta cover more space. So I do nice straight lines all over the bodywork, and if I do happen to scratch it for any reason, it's easier to correct later. So a couple of things I wanted to point out before I get started, but let's get to it. I'll catch up to you guys during the drying phase, the rinse and dry phase. Now what I'll do for the exhaust tips is I'll probably grab just a regular old rag that I have and go into the rinse bucket. The exhaust tips on this AWE switch path are ceramic coated as well. It's a lot easier to clean them that way. And then when I'm done with this, I just make sure to store it in my wheel, in the wheel bucket. Some obnoxious pricks live in this neighborhood. All right, that was pretty cool. This is one of the biggest advantages to having a really good graphene ceramic coating on any car is when it comes to drying it, you can use one of these. So it is so extremely hydrophobic. What I have to do is turn on a gentle, steady stream from this hose, and you'll see I just run it over, and already you can see kind of what it does. But it effectively sheets all the water off the car and gets about 90–95% of the water off the surface of the car, and then I can take the air cannon and finish it the rest of the way. I do not have to even really touch the body with a towel. I still use a towel to get the moisture off the windows. I don't care about scrubbing on those or pressing hard. They're not going to scratch. But as far as the paint goes, I try to touch it as minimally as possible to avoid scratching and messing it up. Show you guys how that works right now. Start right at the top of the car. How friggin' sweet is that? It takes pretty much everything off. Basically, I put everything away. I got the air cannon out, and I'm gonna use one of my drying towels to do all the glass. Doesn't matter how much pressure you put on the glass because it will not scratch. On my car, this back to here is all glass, and then this is paint in here. So if you see me doing this here, this is just the sunroof and a piece of glass in the front. It's not gonna scratch anything, but the paint here, down onto the quarter panel, and the rear, I'm all gonna blow off with the air cannon. Another thing too, I suggest fold your towels. The more folds you have, the more give they'll provide, and the more pressure you can put on the back here without transferring it through the towel. One thing that's not too bad, if you just have your regular old towel, what I do is, if you need to use this on the paint, you don't have anything like the blow dryer or the ceramic coating that it's really hydrophobic, just spray the towel with a little bit of quick detailer, and then you can place it and pat and lift, and it'll dry. So this is how I used to do it before I had the ceramic coating on there. It works just fine. And then if there's just a little bit of something left on there, the spray detailer later will take care of it. But that's a safe method to use. Lay it over, don't drag, and just pat. And it'll dry it right up. So as I'm going at this with the air cannon, there's a few spots, pretty similar spots on every car where water's gonna be caught. And if you don't get it out, the next time you drive, it's gonna come out and streak behind the mirrors, in trim, like this. On this car especially, it gets caught right in here. And you'll see it as I'm blowing out, it'll come all out here, it'll run out the back. So if that's not all out by tomorrow when we go to Cars and Coffee, I'll have nice streaks all the way back here. After I get the outside done, I usually pop the trunk, open the doors. I dry out the door jams, the jam inside the trunk, and then when closing the trunk, water's gonna wanna run out, so I just lay 2 paper towels there and that catches the water. But you guys will see that when I do it. But I basically use the towel to remove all the moisture I can that's not on the paint, and that's less that has to come off when I use the air cannon. All right, I'm at the point where I've taken the air cannon and I've pretty much blown all the water off the surface of the car. I've gotten as much as possible out of all the nooks and crannies it likes to sit in. And what I like to do at this point is just have a towel ready and open all the doors, pop the trunk, and just dry off inside the sills here where some water tends to accumulate. Now I didn't wash that, so there's going to be some dirt and everything in there. So I typically grab kind of like a separate towel or something that I have lying around that I use for miscellaneous things. They're not like my detailing towels that I keep separate for just going on paint. This is my towel for drying wheels and exhaust tips and stuff. You can see it's got a little grime on it even after it's been cleaned, so I keep this free of the paint. But just grab something like this and pop all the doors open. And I just like to get everything that's in here all the way down through the door sills. What I end up doing later too is taking just some like glass cleaner or something like that and wiping this down, and that's further preventing extra water from when you start driving the car blowing out and getting on the paint you just cleaned. So I'm gonna do that for all 4 of these doors and then the trunk. Now for the trunk, I like to have 2 paper towels ready to catch any water that's gonna drip off the corner here. I just pop those underneath. I grab that same towel and I get up in here. Sometimes that happens. The towel doesn't really have to stay there past you drying the inside. I just put it there initially so it doesn't drip dirty water onto the quarter panel. Hold on to these because you're going to use them, or I at least use them when putting the lid back down, because when you run the lid back down, some water wants to drip out back onto the bumper here. Right about here, I make sure they're not in the way of the latch. Go ahead and close. If I didn't have those there, water would run back down here and would start dripping down the bumper. So I keep this separate towel off to the side to dry the wheels off. Now, as I was blow drying the car, you could see that I would once in a while come down and hit the wheel with some air, and it dries them off for the most part, but I usually just go back and get the last few drops with this towel. Car's all dry, wheels are dry. I got all the water out of the trouble spots and out of the door jams and out of the trunk. So at this point, I'm ready to put on kind of a protection coating until I wash it the next time. I've experimented with a few things, detail sprays, silicone sprays, graphene sprays, and I'll go over in a second what I like the most and what I've gotten the best results out of. But I also wanted to address, we still got a few bug guts that didn't come off in the wash, and then there's a water spot or droplet on the rear of the car too that I noticed. But what I'm going to use for these is just a regular old detail spray. This is Adams. I ordered some shampoo from them, and they actually sent me the wrong thing. They sent me a gallon of the stuff, but then I let them know about it. They said sorry for the mistake, keep the detail spray, and then they actually sent me the shampoo, the car wash that I ordered. So I got a ton of this stuff. It's actually really awesome for a really quick spray, for something that doesn't cure on the paint that you just want to like wipe everything down with. This stuff's really awesome, and that's actually what I'm going to use to try to get these off. I'm going to give it a light spray, a really light rub with a microfiber towel, and that should pull that off, especially with the ceramic coating on there. It should come off pretty easily. But what I want to do after that is use something that has a little more longevity. Ceramic coating that I have on here is made by a company called Ethos, and it is their Graphine matrix coating. I absolutely love it. It's awesome. It resists water spots a lot better than the one I used to have on, which was made by R1 Coatings. Sorry guys, there's tons of water spots and everything all over the car after a few months, and it was kind of etched into the ceramic coating. And I treat it the same way that I treat this thing every single day, but this graphene coating has been awesome. They make something called Resist, which is a graphene hybrid coating. You can use it without the regular ceramic coating on regular paint and sealant or wax or whatever. But you can also use it to bolster or protect the ceramic coat that you already have on the car now. So I picked some of this stuff up. It was like 20 bucks a bottle. Not super slick at first because you could tell it didn't cure, but as soon as it cured and you ran your hand over it or anything, it it was like melted butter. It was super high gloss, super hydrophobic. And I mean, you can still see it. This is right after a regular wash with nothing on it. Incredible amount of reflectivity. That's a word, right? You know what I mean. It's really reflective. So I'm really digging this stuff. So I'm actually gonna put another coat of this on, but only after I get some of this stuff off in the water spots in the back. And pretty easy to apply. It does kind of cure and flash. You don't wanna do like spray the whole hood and then only get like halfway before it starts to cure over here. It gets more and more difficult to come off. It doesn't get really like hard or crystalline or anything like a real ceramic coating would, but it gets like hazy and streaky and you can kind of see it. So I usually work in like a 2 by 2 foot area. I spray it on. I hit it initially with a wipe down. I flip that cloth over. I wipe it down again and then I get a second cloth that's totally dry and then buff it till I don't see any of it left on there, and I'll do that over the entire car. And yeah, I'm really digging this stuff. So I'll get to that right now. Let me work on getting this stuff off. I'll get started on that and I'll let you guys know how it goes. Yeah, so just like that, guys, you can see the bug residue, real light with some detail spray. This is the magic of having a really good ceramic coating. Not really any pressure on the paint, which is what we don't want. That's why I try to avoid using bug and tar remover before the washes, because you tend to do that and then you get like an abrasive weaved sponge and you kind of drag it on there and it's just, the paint doesn't like that. But as you can see, I did it really lightly with some spray, and what didn't come off during the wash comes right off. So there it is right now, no bugs. And you can still see them over here. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna work this this Adams detail spray in here a little bit, get those off. Do it down here on the bumper, and then I'm gonna put that Ethos graphene spray on. So before I put this final coating on, or this final spray, I decided to close the door, keep the wind down. It's a little breezy outside. Keep any dust from blowing up on this final coat, and then I'm gonna leave the car in here. I'm gonna leave the car in here till tomorrow when we take it to Cars and Coffee. Here's the towel I use kind of to apply and then do the initial buff. It is two-sided. I think I initially bought it. It's supposed to be a drying towel, but it's actually really nice, really soft, and gets nice even coverage when you are applying the spray. So usually I'll take the blue side or something, fold it over, make it nice and thick. I'll spray the coating on. I'll wipe it with one side, I'll flip it, and then kind of even it out with the other side. It'll start to actually dry, and then I'll take one of these really, really nice and soft and plush Adams microfiber towels and just make sure I didn't miss anything. And then by the time we're done, it should be super slick, really glossy, and have a nice layer of protection on it on top of the one that I put on a couple weeks ago. And I believe you can keep using that stuff over and over again. It'll just keep, you know, building some layers on there. And the ultimate goal is to protect that ceramic coating, that 5-year ceramic coating that I put on it last year, because that's at the base of it. That's what's protecting the paint. That's what's resisting the water spots, the staining, and all of the elements. I can hear that douchebag with the door closed. Same method again. I'm gonna start with the roof, the top. This stuff can go on glass, so I'm gonna do the glass as well. I'm gonna work my way down to the hood, the mirrors. I'm gonna do from this line, quarter panel up, and then I'll do the sides. Well, after I do the fender, the front bumper, the sides, work my way back, and then I'll end with the rear bumper. Spritz on the towel first, and just wipe it on. And you can see it's going on nice and evenly. There's not too much. And it's starting to come off, which is what we want. I flip the towel. Make sure that all comes off. Now, as of right now, it feels a little it's got a little resistance and grip to it. It's because it has not kind of cured and set yet, but in about 5-10 minutes, if I come back and do this, it's gonna be really nice and slick. And the other advantage of doing the step where we took the air cannon and blew water out of everywhere that it likes to sit is when you start to go do this, I'm sure you guys have had it happen, you go like that or something and it pulls water out and drags it with you, and you gotta dry it, and then you got water mixing with this stuff, and so that's one of the advantages of getting all the water out that you can, is it makes steps down the road a little easier. Here she is, all finished. I got the graphene spray all finished up. I'm gonna back it out, park it in here for tonight. I'm gonna leave the mirrors like this. They tend to drain a little better and should be all dry by tomorrow. But ran out of time today. Probably in the morning I'm gonna put some just some tire shine on. I don't use the super glossy stuff. I have, wherever it is, some more matte looking satin finish tire shine. Just makes them look a little darker, but not super glossy, and then it doesn't sling all over the place when I'm doing supersonic speed. So, but there's a routine wash, guys. Hopefully this helped you out a little bit. Really the goal in the end of the day is longevity of the paint, longevity of the shine, longevity of the coating that I spent a really long time and a good amount of money putting on the car. So through good routine washing, I've managed to maintain that. The paint looks nearly flawless. A few imperfections here and there, rock chips, all that stuff. But overall, not too shabby. And yeah, like and subscribe, guys, please. I'm always trying to get you guys some more content when I have time, and good content too, stuff that pertains to what you guys are looking to see and learn about. And again, I'm still even after 10 years of doing this, I'm in the learning process. I learn new stuff all the time. I learn about new products, new techniques, but you guys can keep your cars looking pretty good as well and keep the paint in really good condition. So last thing I'm gonna do, probably again tomorrow, is the windows. Still have a few bug marks on them, maybe a few water spots from where I didn't completely dry it off, but I got these nice little glass towels. They're microfiber on this side, and then they're a really flat, kind of grippy cloth on the other side, and I just flip those over, and I use some invisible glass. Stuff it's a classic, but it works really well. And hopefully you guys like the results. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.